Hello, and welcome to Split Your Head. I'm your host, Bob, and today's special guest is Jerry McGlothlin, who is joining me for a discussion on Shinji Sōmai. Jerry is one of the most interesting writers I've come across on Letterboxd. We connected a while back over a mutual love for Italian horror, and I've been following him since, thanks to his impeccably unique taste and beautiful writing. It was through his many fantastic reviews that I came across an obscure gem called Typhoon Club, a film we now are both huge fans of, and decided we need to try and dissect from this Japanese master of long shots and unique coming-of-age tales, Shinji Sōmai. So, Jerry, how are you?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm ready to talk about this super unique and beautiful and really underseen director.
Yeah.
So starting off, what was the first film of his that you watched?
So I believe it was Typhoon Club.
Okay.
Moving came. It was Typhoon Club, and then Moving came after, and then nothing. I just logged those two away in my mind as amazing movies, and then just kind of didn't dive any deeper. Went elsewhere, and then Sailor Suit I found. Because I was going through just random, I was trying to find more Japanese cinema that I could own, on physical media, because I'm a big physical media guy.
Same, yeah.
Especially from the post new wave stuff, after the studios kind of, with the director's company, that came in 80s to 2000s. There's not that much on, Region 1 proper Blu-ray.
Yeah. Do you have any of those third window Blu-rays that they've been putting out, though?
I don't. I'm Region A locked, and the reason for that is because if I went region free, I would spend so much money.
I know, man. I know.
And so I've kind of made, but now see with 4K, now it's all region free if it's 4K.
Right.
So it's a little, I've got them on my radar. Third, and they do some region A playable stuff, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I actually made an order with Terracotta Distribution.
Yep.
Picking up Luminous Woman, Love Hotel, and Door 1 and 2. However, there was a Canada Post strike that came up just after I ordered it. And because of that, it's been sitting, I think, in an airport in Toronto since mid-December, and I'm still waiting on them. Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to pour over those editions or whatever, but I'm equally drawn to this area of Japanese film history of the director's company, especially with Kiyoshi Kurosawa coming from that area as well, and those two guys being somewhat peers. I think Kiyoshi was even an AD on a few of Shinji Sōmai's films. But yeah, going back to Typhoon Club, that was the first film you watched. And what was it about it? If someone's tuning in now and they're like, what the fuck is Typhoon Club? Who is Shinji Sōmai? Explain to the people listening, what was it that blew you away about that film?
Yeah, so I think I'd seen All About Lily Shushu first, which is for me kind of the pinnacle of coming of age. And Japan and really East Asia, Taiwan, mainland China, Hong Kong, and Japan, those are really the hubs for me for coming of age. I don't know what it is about that part of the world that they get it so much, because you compare something like Typhoon Club to The Breakfast Club. To me, I'm not a big Breakfast Club guy. I like Risky Business and Smooth Talk. Those are a couple American coming of age movies that but for the most part, I find the 16 Candles Breakfast, I'm not really into it.
You don't like John Hughes?
I like his stuff with John Candy. So Great Outdoors, Uncle Buck, all that I love. Yeah. Because of nostalgia reasons, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
but yeah, no. So Typhoon Club, man, I when I saw it, it really kind of knocked me off my feet because it did both of the things that I really like. It transgressed and made you feel a little off put, but it also kind of transcends in a way and becomes this really it kind of reminds me the typhoon is a central metaphor for so much, but it really is a metaphysical, it takes on a metaphysical quality, I think. It becomes this, I don't know, it kind of dictates it either, but then that's the other thing about Typhoon Club. It's very elusive. It's very open to interpretation, very ambiguous. So
Absolutely.
is the Typhoon dictating these events? Is it a sort of catalyst for them? Or is it just kind of there and these things would have happened either way? It's there's a lot to think about. And also not the last scene, but the penultimate scene with.
Are we gonna? So spoiler alert.
Yeah. Well, I don't have to spoil it, but just
okay.
that last scene with Mikami. And
yeah,
but that was what really, for me, that you know,
Yeah.
to answer your question, that scene really, more than any of the technical stuff, which is great, any of the themes, the metaphors, any of that, really, because with film I connect on a really primal level. It's mostly like more than analysis or dialectics, any of that crap. It's emotion for me. What do I feel?
Yeah.
So, and that Mikami's fate, we'll just say, because I don't want to spoil anything, that
Perfect.
was what really, it stuck in my mind. And there's a certain shot that's stuck in my mind that I'm sure you can
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's it.
Two things to that, because I'm trying to keep my train of thought going here. So I did, back in the day, go to a really shitty film school. It was like a 1.5-year program. And back then I didn't know a lot about East Asian cinema. And I remember one of my film classes, the teacher talking about how like the two main differences between like, you know, Western cinema versus Eastern cinema is that Western cinema is more concerned with narrative and Eastern cinema is more concerned with emotion. And so I think like hearing that, I mean, even if that's like such a generalized way of looking at it, it does kind of like inform how I've like all these films that we're talking about, Shinji Sōmai's films. I mean, Typhoon Club seems to be a film that's, as you said, like dictated by the typhoon, but also, you know, it's propelled by emotions over like any kind of like narrative coherency, you know, because like I think if you try to write out what happens plot wise in the film, it seems kind of jumbled and confusing. But it's just done in such a masterful and meditative way that everything feels like perfectly in the pocket, and it's pulling emotion out of every scene. Now, the scene you were talking about that we're trying to talk about in a very mysterious way as to not spoil it.
Yeah.
That scene makes me think about something I could have sworn Sam Deegan said, and something I've heard come up a lot about, you know, something that is like powerful about Japanese cinema, but what maybe keeps it at arm's length for a lot of people and in Western part of the world is that there's this use of, it's not even like surrealism necessarily. I almost look at it as like things will happen that aren't based in out of reality. They seem heightened in like a cinematic way, but something about it in Japanese cinema, you don't even bat an eye really. Like,
no, yeah.
Yeah. And I think in Typhoon Club, the thing we're talking about, it almost seems slapstick in a way. Like it's almost like, it almost seems like a joke that happens and would be tasteless in say like an American film. But because they don't know, or I can't generalize about this, but generally speaking, like they don't know how to incorporate these kind of like deviations from reality without making an entirely surreal film.
Yeah. So yeah, and I would say that like there are examples, excuse me, where an American film does do that, or a Western film. Like totally. I don't know if you've ever heard of a film called Ham on Rye. It's also a coming of age movie.
Oh, I've heard of it. It's actually like fairly new, right? It came out in the past few years?
Newish. Well, okay. I think it maybe 2016. I don't know. I'm bad with dates, but yeah, it's not that old. It's definitely modern. It's a small film. The director Tyler, I don't remember how to pronounce his last name. It starts with a T. He did a movie just recently that got a pretty good release and got some good attention, which I was happy about. But anyway, Ham on Rye kind of does that, where it intersperses these moments of, like you said, it's not quite surrealism, but it's a sort of elevated, I hate that word too. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like it's this absurdity that there's just pokes in. Now, the difference, of course, being now with Sōmai, these moments for Sōmai a lot of times are very abrupt, and they're very not necessarily physically violent, but cerebrally violent. Like they interrupt a sort of serenity, or at the very least, they feel like anything that's going on in the subconscious of the character is brought to the surface in this sort of absurdist way.
Okay, I
but
like that.
It's not, well, at least in the case of Typhoon Club, it's not like carnivalesque. Although there's a little bit of that in his earlier stuff, I think that's a bit more playful.
Totally. Yeah,
but yeah.
And Luminous Woman, which is a film he did, I think, shortly after Typhoon Club, really indulges in that. That was the one film that we were talking about this because we were kind of going over the films to watch, and that was the one film that there was no available copy for you to watch. But that one, to me, would be his most like outright surreal from beginning to end. I would compare it to something like Santa Sangre, the Jodorowsky film.
Okay, so yeah, really out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, saying that is like maybe giving a bit of a wrong impression because he really scales it back. But the characters, all of the characters feel like almost like symbols in a way. I mean, the main character is sort of this weird man-child who has like superhuman strength. And
I got that impression from the trailer you sent. It looked really good. And like aesthetically, it looked really cool. Like the use of color.
Yeah, exactly. And like just the whole plot it feels a bit like a weird fairy tale in a way. But I mean, Sōmai never fully indulges in surrealism, but he tends to like kind of dip a toe in here and there. And I think that that's sort of something that, as I was saying earlier, like that can happen a lot in Japanese cinema and people kind of struggle with that. But I think there's always like this emotional through line for those who watch it and like, I mean, I hate to say this, but like get it, finger quotes.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's not even dream logic in a way. It's something entirely different.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And I think that what's interesting if you look at it from a little farther back, like Oshima and Toshio and how you pronounce it? Ariyama? Is that how you pronounce it?
Ariyama.
No. Who did Throw Away Your Books Rally in the Street?
Oh, Shuji Terayama.
Terayama. Okay, forgot the T. Those guys and the Japanese New Wave guys.
Yeah.
They I'm not all the time, but they made a concerted effort to kind of take emotion a little bit out of it. I think was a more the Godard influence. Which at least for me, it doesn't resonate emotionally with me. But although something like Throw Away Your Books Rally in the Streets does, but something like Diary of a Shinjuku Thief from Oshima.
I haven't seen that one, no.
Or any of those, like in that period for Oshima where it was very politically charged, it seemed less interested in an emotional resonance than it did a dialectical one or a political one or it was trying to make a statement. And I think that was rebelling against something like Kurosawa or Kobayashi where they're very aesthetically driven, but they're also very emotionally. Because, I mean, you watch Seven Samurai and you're so invested. You watch Harakiri and you're so invested. And they're exploring more of Japan's history, Japanese history, I think. But there's still, of course, it all resonates into a lot of times that present and even today's. So
with Shinji Sōmai, then, do you think his films are kind of a response to that? Sort
Definitely.
of, I guess it's like it's almost like a stoicism of film.
It is. And I think that he started a bit playful, albeit dark at times, but almost slapsticky, like he said.
Yeah.
And then he gets, with Typhoon Club, he gets a little serious, but then Luminous Woman sounds almost not playful per se, but it sounds a little bit more adventurous. And then, but like by the time you get to Moving, which was 93, I think, he is fully engaging in an emotional, conversation, or he's with the audience. it's so different from Sailor Suit,
Oh,
for instance.
totally.
It's
Yeah. I would say Moving to me is like, I mean, if you have to pick one film of his to kind of spread to the masses, that would be
oh
it.
yeah,
And I was thinking about this. I think what it is that, you know, the surreal aspects of it, which are fairly pared down compared to his older stuff, um, they feel a lot more direct in terms of like how the metaphors work, you
yeah,
know? There's a whole section towards the end of Moving where it does get like a little bit more surreal, but you can kind of like trace it as the evolution of this little girl. And so
yeah.
you can kind of see, oh, she went through that as a form of transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we should talk about Moving though, like what the central premises of it.
So it's this young girl named Ren, and her parents. It's a really simple movie. Her parents get divorced, and she
Yeah.
has to deal with that.
Mm.
And it's such like a almost banal, idea to explore.
Yeah.
But the central performance, I can't remember the little girl's name.
Tomoko Tabata or something?
Yes, I was gonna say Tomoko something. For me, it is the
Yeah.
best child performance of all time, and one of the best performances period of all time, or at least my favorite. I don't like to deal in best, objectives,
Right.
but for me, it's my favorite, and I could probably make a pretty compelling argument about it being the best or one of the best.
Yeah.
She is so. I mean, she her face and her physicality,
Her
and
eyes.
the
for
emotion.
me.
Oh yeah, the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can see into this little girl's soul, and it's like, how does this child, even if her parents were divorced or anything, it doesn't matter. How does this child have such a grasp on these simple but emotionally complex realities and responses, and having to deal with all these things? And Moving is a film that, for me, again, it could be so banal. It could be, oh, the little girl acts out because her parent, but the way Somai presents it all, and
Yeah.
the way Tomoko performs in the film, is just so good. And Moving is I when I revisited it last night, there are long takes, but nothing like earlier Somai. He's more concerned with matching faces, and with like there are shots. It kind of reminded me of In the Mood for Love, in the sense that
Okay.
except in The Mood for Love, it's more romantic, whereas with Moving, there's longing in The Mood for Love and all that. With Moving, it's the opposite. There's a scene after a big confrontation where the father and mother are facing opposite directions in the frame, and they're also, the father, I believe, is in the foreground of the frame on the left side, and the mother is in the background on the right side. It could be flipped, but regardless, and they're facing opposite directions. And even during the confrontation, I believe it's the same dynamic. One in the foreground, one in the background, both facing opposite directions. So, and then later, when the father comes up after that big confrontation, comes up to talk to Ren, there's a partition that separates them right down the middle. And it really does convey the sort of emotional divide between them, this sort of barrier, this sort of communication breakdown. I think that's so common. I'm lucky enough, my parents are happily married and have been my whole life. But I've talked to people who come from a family with divorced parents, and there's such like it's so hard to communicate from what I've heard. But even having never gone through anything like that, I can totally emotionally connect with these characters. And the mother and the father are both flawed, but you empathize and sympathize even with them, because they're human beings who are trying to find their own happiness, but also they have this child who is so in touch with her own emotions while also being so confused by this because she's a child. It's just such a powerful film for me.
Hearing you talk about it, and it makes me realize like how successful it is at conveying the emotions of the child, the emotions of the situation. But it makes me wonder if maybe to some extent he's dropped a bit of the ambiguity that exists in a lot of his earlier films. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a little bit of ambiguity at the end with the more surrealist moment, but not really. It's pretty clear that it's
No,
a
yeah.
metaphor for just coming of age. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's not trite, I don't think.
No.
It's not pretentious. It feels like you buy it 100%, and it doesn't
Yeah, it
feel
feels
forced.
earned.
It does super earned,
Yeah.
it almost becomes this odyssey, this mini little odyssey for this girl. She goes out and she goes to the woods, and I mean, it's not quite Alice in Wonderland, but I mean, it's, and then she finally arrives to, the land ends. She's at the water, and then she sees this thing. It's, I don't think we're spoiling it. That's a kind of a hard movie to spoil.
I wouldn't say so. Yeah. Because we're talking about these events that aren't really like if you don't have the context, you don't really think like, oh, well, that's why that happened. Like if you're watching the film, you remember a conversation, maybe it's spoiling it, but yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like with Typhoon Club, that's like a journey. The whole thing is a journey. Whereas with Moving, it's a journey from like, this event, dealing with it, finding it. It's really straightforward. But with Typhoon Club, which is not straightforward. And we were talking about like timelines and time jumps and flashbacks and stuff. Not so much time jumps, but flashbacks in Typhoon.
Yeah, I didn't even realize until the most recent viewing I did, and then talking with you before we started recording, that there were even flashbacks. I thought that everything was happening in like a linear fashion because they even indicate that by it being like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. So now that I know that, it's like it's like he doesn't really work that hard at trying to make that distinguishable, but that's sort of just part of the whole experience. Like it's really like the opposite of hand holding in terms of storytelling in cinema.
Yeah. And we may differ here, but in my opinion, he sometimes almost maybe does that a little too much, and it becomes jumbled. Or chaotic. I can
see that.
You could say. There's a sort of sense of entropy, and I think in his earlier stuff, like Sailor Suit, Sailor Suit really works for me because it's so sincere in its presentation of its scenario.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of a funny scenario.
It's very funny.
There's something kind of cute about it in a way.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too that we can touch on is the fact that both Sailor Suit and Lost Chapter are, I think they call them idol films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to remember to bring that up because I didn't know that about Sailor Suit, but Lost Chapter of Snow Passion is an idol film because the main star, I think her name is Yuki Sato. Mm-hmm. She was like a pop star. And then he also did the same thing with Typhoon Club. Typhoon Club, I believe, had an idol in it. And then there's another film he did after that, I think called Tokyo Heaven, which is also an idol film. So I don't know too much about these idol films, but essentially it would be like a sort of like a vehicle for presenting this already famous pop star. You know? So it's almost like doing a film with like a singer in it to like appeal to more people. It doesn't seem as like common in North America. I can't really think of any successful examples of that.
Well, successful is the key word there. There are plenty of
Crossroads
or like A Star Is Born for like multiple generations. But I mean, at the same time, no, but like with Sailor Suit, I didn't realize until I watched like some of the supplements and read about it. She was like, I can't remember her name. I can't recall. Maybe you can look it up. I can't remember it, but she was like the biggest thing in Japan at the time. So that movie, I think it caused a little bit of a stir too, because Yakuza was still very kind of like touch and go,
Yeah.
They didn't want to really.
Well, we should explain then the plot of Sailor Suit Machine Gun is about a little girl who sort of through a series of events ends up inheriting, I guess it's like a small wing of a Yakuza clan.
Or it's the whole clan, but yet it's like so diminished over time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you're right. So basically they'll just do whatever she says. Yeah. And on paper, that's like kind of a funny idea. The way it's executed, it doesn't seem like he's like taken the humor out of it, but he's just done it in a similar kind of I don't want to say meditative, but it's literally the best way to describe like his overall pace and approach.
Yeah, well, with Sailor Suit too, I think it somehow pulls off this, to me, grand feat of like not taking itself too seriously, but also not taking it's like funny.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But it's not like, see, for me, I thought PP Rider was, of the 5 I've seen, his funniest.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like when he said, I don't laugh at movies often, like out loud, but when he said, God, how many fat kids can there be in one town? I just,
That's
you know, because I was a chubby kid. I laughed at that,
same.
you know? I was
yeah.
like, and I guess in Japan, not many, but I was like, he's never been to America. He's never been. But, you know, I hollered at that. But at the same time, PP Rider is much darker in terms of the scenarios and like, and the sense of danger.
Yes.
Both behind and in front of the camera.
PP Rider, I think, was before Sailor Suit Machine Gun.
Yeah.
And
I think it was right before.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think he did them consecutively. And Sailor Suit Machine Gun was based on, I believe, a manga or a manga series. PP Rider, I'm not too sure. I don't think it was based. Oh, no, you know what? PP Rider, do you know who it was co-written by?
Mm-mm.
Paul Schrader's brother.
Really?
Leonard Schrader, yeah.
No way.
And I guess his wife, I think, Chico Schrader.
I always forget that Paul's brother was like, he wasn't Japanese. I mean, not Japanese born, but there's that connection there. And then like Paul made the Mishima movie, which I still haven't seen, which is a sin. But
hot take.
I haven't. Yeah,
I think it's a little overrated. That's just me, but
no. You know, Schrader is an interesting beast for me. I don't want to get too deep into him. My favorite Schrader movie is probably Light Sleeper, or no, American Gigolo, which they're kind of the same movie.
I haven't seen that. He kind of does the same movie every time, and
it's just
no
pickpocket.
problem with it. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's just American pickpocket. Yeah. Gigolo's great. I didn't like it the first time, and then of all people, my 70-something-year-old grandma said something about American Gigolo, like something about the way he lays his clothes out on the bed, and I even opened like my Letterboxd review with that, and that stuck with me. That's something that'll happen with me. Like it happened with Longlegs recently, where one little thing. Or Visconti, he's a great example. The Damned, stuff like that.
I still need to see that one. I've had
you'll love. Oh, dude, you'll love it.
Okay, 6.
You'll love it so much because like Visconti can be very austere,
right,
and very like composed and but as he got older, he kind of just got like he kind of got a little wild, which is perfect. It's a perfect balance. Have you seen Ludwig?
No, I think I don't think I've seen any Visconti.
Really?
Yeah. I was going to say The Bicycle Thief, but that's someone else.
No, that's oh my God, why am I spacing on this?
Yeah, I know.
De Sica,
yeah. So I haven't seen any Visconti, no.
Well, I know you're a big Italian, definitely Italian genre films too, but just Italian cinema in general. The Damned is perfect for you. Perfect for you.
I've
sensibilities.
Heard that. From what I've heard, it's about a group of Nazis that fall further into debauchery or something.
Yeah, well, it's almost like Shakespeare Nazis. It's this family thing, but it goes really dark. I don't know if you want to cut this out, but like it goes really dark, like pedophilia, incest.
Oh wow,
all that stuff. But then it also does interesting things with like a queer subtext. I mean, Visconti himself was a gay man, but
okay, cool.
But like presenting the Nazis, there's one sequence in The Damned. Are you familiar with the Night of the Long Knives? It was a real event where the Nazis came to this port, this pub or something at a port, and slaughtered all these browncoats. It was really kind of the turn when the Nazis, the SS guys, were like, "No, we're fucking taking over. Fuck these browncoats,"
Shit.
And it's that sequence, but presented as a gay orgy.
Whoa.
So, really interesting.
Yeah,
and aesthetically brilliant. Yeah. Helmut Berger is really good in the movie.
Cool.
Yeah. And if you've probably seen Helmut Berger be like really gross and sinister, so he does that here.
Sweet. Well, it's funny you touched on two things that I feel can help us segue into Lost Chapter of Snow, Passion.
Yeah.
I'll let you guess what those
yeah.
two. Yeah, so that was the film he did before Typhoon Club, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So in 1985, he did Lost Chapter of Snow, Passion, Typhoon Club, and Love Hotel, which are
3
all
in 1 year.
I believe so. Yeah.
Holy shit! It's like a Fassbender thing, or Fulci even.
Yeah, it's especially considering how like vast his films feel. Like I think,
how varied those 3 are.
But okay, so Love Hotel, which was the first film I saw of Somai's. I saw Love Hotel summer of 2023 in preparation for an episode I did with Fred Barrett on Hisayasu Sato. Now, it actually helped because he came back on the following year to do an episode on Takashi Ishii, and Takashi Ishii wrote Love Hotel. So when I watched Love Hotel, I kind of focused more on Takashi Ishii's presence. Because, I mean, Shinji Sōmai, I don't think he really wrote anything. He was more of the director of most of his films.
No, and Love Hotel is very anomalous in his body of work.
Well, yeah,
or at least from what I've seen. I haven't seen all of it, so I maybe shouldn't say that. But
same, yeah. I think I'd say from looking through his filmography, and I think I've seen about 6 or 7 of his films, or maybe more at this point. Majority of his films are about kids.
Yeah.
Love Hotel is not at all about
Thank God.
Yes. Oh my God. Which should indicate what kind of film this is, which is, it's a pink film. So yeah. And it's a very dark and very sad one. But I don't, okay. So I have a hard time remembering it fully, but I went through my review of it and I seem to have loved it, and I gave it 4 stars, and I purchased it from Terracotta Distribution. So I'm excited to go through it again. But yeah, as we were saying, like that's completely different from the other stuff he was doing. So Lost Chapter of Snow, Passion is a really interesting film. I think it's the best way to put it.
It's his most... Yo, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to launch into what it's about.
Okay,
kind of a little...
Just probably let them know before we start talking, because people can be like, what?
Yeah, so it's about a little girl that gets adopted by this young man who's like a businessman. And he's basically like rescuing her from sort of like a foster home situation. And this is all shown to us in probably one of the greatest sequences of his entire career.
Yeah.
It's all, I believe, one continuous shot on a soundstage that's covered in snow and goes over different locations. It feels almost something you'd see in like the most whimsical Christmas film.
Yeah.
You know, it's so beautiful.
And stylistically, I was reminded of a Greek filmmaker, actually, named Theo Angelopoulos. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be botching that. He made these really heady, he made some art house stuff, some random stuff. In fact, a coming of age movie of his own called Landscape in the Mist. I guess it could be considered coming of age. But he made these 3 war films. Mm-hmm. The first one is called... I don't remember. It's my least favorite of the 3. The second one is called The Traveling Players, and the third one is called The Hunters. And I believe The Hunters contains sequences like this but I know The Traveling Players has these sequences like with Lost Chapter of Snow, where does Lost Chapter of Snow in that one take, does it cover any time jumps? I think it does.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, because it's sort of fast forwarding in a way through the events. It's almost like the prologue to the actual film.
A one take prologue, which is and so that's incredible. What happens. Changing the sets, the lighting changes. Now in The Traveling Players, I think it jumps like years, and there's tons of extras and stuff. But that's what it reminded me of, and I was so impressed by that one take that I had read about it, I think. I had read about that opening oneer. Yeah. Did not go where I expected it to
go. No. So it fast forwards after that to when she's 17, maybe.
She's not in university yet, so
No, okay, so maybe 17, 18 around
18,
there.
yeah, 17, 18, yeah.
And it's kind of hard to explain, but basically there's sort of a murder mystery involving her sister from her foster home. But then there's also kind of a very elusive love story between her and her adopted father
Or
and
his friend, or his friend, yeah.
Yeah. Now it's weird because okay, to be fair, it never really shows any kind of like romantic contact between the characters. And honestly, I didn't really pick up on it until like the last maybe chapter of the final act of the film. That's really when it kind of comes to the forefront. Up until that point, it's sort of like a very loose coming of age story. There's moments of surrealism that reminded me of Jean Rollins films where like she goes to the lake and there's that clown or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that shot though, where it's her younger self and her in the background. Again, Somai's use of background and foreground and contrast and he uses a lot of deep focus too, which is really cool, I think. But yeah, no, that sequence, and then isn't there another really kind of bizarre? I can't remember. The dance feels kind of strange. Even the dance that the girl does, who I guess this is a spoiler. Should we say what happens to the other? Well, you said it's a murder mystery. It's pretty early on.
Yeah,
there's a murder mystery. Someone dies.
You go into it, like all the plot synopsises online explain that it has to do with her basically murder of her stepsister. And it happens like, within the first
really
half
early
hour. Yeah.
See, this movie was a bit jumbled in my opinion. This is
totally.
Like we were saying earlier with Somai, he didn't really hone it in. He hadn't really honed it in quite yet. Now but what's interesting though is I think Sailor Suit, while chaotic, is and especially it almost feels like a Hong Kong like Cat 3 film at a certain point. Like when she goes to that guy's house in Sailor Suit, it gets really bizarre in a good way though. Like
totally.
and it's raw and just going for it. Lost Chapter and to a lesser extent PP Rider feel very kind of all over the place.
Totally.
Now I think it works a little more in PP Rider.
I would agree. Yeah. I preferred that one.
Yeah, but with Lost Chapter, it becomes the murder mystery kind of is in the periphery. The romance kind of romance. I don't know. I hesitate to call it. What I feel like it is it's more just this girl. Again, it's the coming of age thing. You might not see this one as such a coming of age movie because it's only the one character, and unlike Moving, she's not a little girl for the whole movie.
Right.
But it is, and it's her. I watched a film the other day. I Start Counting. Have you seen that English film?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I have the Blu-ray.
I Start Counting. I watched that recently, and so of course I was reminded a little bit of that sort of desire. Maybe more of a juvenile thing. Yeah, you know.
They kind of handle it better from what I remember. I Start
Counting does? Yeah.
I feel like that because it's completely one-sided.
For sure.
And it's more like Jenny Agutter as the little girl, who's, I think, well, I guess she would have maybe been a little bit younger than...
she was like 15 when they made that, I think.
Yeah. So she's basically has a crush on her adopted brother, who may or may not be a serial killer.
Yeah.
And the whole film, it never shows him ever returning any kind of
he's very brotherly, but not in a weird way at all. This movie, and we should say this movie doesn't, but it's a little too gray for me to love.
Yeah, I agree.
Not that I have anything against but it's not trying to be a super transgressive like Himiko. You seen that?
Oh, yeah.
That movie fully good. Like, yes, This Transient Life is another great example if you've seen that.
Oh, I haven't. I really want to check that out.
There's a lot of Japanese films I've seen that just go fully on down the incest rabbit hole. And like, that's fine if you're, but this movie's trying to be more I don't know if refined is the right word, but it's definitely not trying to be that. It's not trying to be.
For me, it's the tone. The tone is everything, and the tone of Himiko feels like this stark, like mythology kind of story. So I don't even really take it as literal as it's not like based in any reality.
Yeah.
And in terms of like Japanese cinema using incest, like I know The Ceremony, the Nagisa Oshima film, he uses it as a metaphor for nationalism and like generations of like passed on tradition that's like being oppressive and everything. So with Lost Chapter of Snow, the tone of the film doesn't feel like it's portraying incest or
potential
age gaps or anything,
whatever, just desire.
Potential. It's not portrayed in any kind of like dark way.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It feels like you're watching like a coming of age, like warm film about this girl. And I think that's where it's troubling. Now, I do think, having seen it, if I watch it again and I know what's in store, I can kind of like prepare myself. It's just, without spoiling it, the very ending shot of the film is when it gets the most like, what degree of this grayness are we going into here?
Which
like,
honestly, I mean, as uncomfortable as it is, it's kind of brilliant the way it,
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this before, how Kiyoshi Kurosawa claims that that's his favorite Shinji Sōmai film. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is the director of Cure, Pulse, like kind of a big J horror guy, and became a huge filmmaker over the years. And Shinji Sōmai, I believe he died in 2001.
He died young.
Age of 50, at the age of 53 of lung cancer. So you kind of wonder if he was still alive, maybe he would kind of be up there with Kiyoshi Kurosawa. But at the same time, like a lot of the films that he was making seem very Japanese, geared towards those sensibilities.
A Japanese audience, yeah.
Although I was looking over his filmography because I wanted to double check. The Friends, which I watched last night, was his third last film. And I think the last two films he did were both more stories about adults. So maybe he was prepping to go more in that direction. I think doing films about like kids and coming of age stories is just maybe a little more like passe now. Like I don't think people really do that as much,
Not as much. I mean, because even with someone like Shinji Iwai, who did All About Lily Shushu, his more recent efforts, well, I mean, Love Letter, I think, is a coming of age, but I haven't seen it. But like, I know he has a film called A Bride for Rip Van Winkle, which is a great title. That's about adults. So a lot of even Kiyoshi Kurosawa made, in his really early efforts, he made coming of age stuff, right? Like Bumpkin Soup and...
Okay, so that, from what I understand, is a Pink film.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, I haven't seen it. I should be transparent. I haven't seen it. It's just got young people.
Neither have I.
He made a horror one with young... Maybe he just has young people in his movies sometimes, or young-looking people, but it's not coming of age. It's interesting that this is his favorite, and I've actually been thinking about that since we talked about it. I think does he mention that in the Typhoon Club, which I've got right there?
Yeah, it's in the interview,
Yeah. It's interesting because if there's anyone who likes to portray and explore really complex emotions and scenarios and internalized, like Cure, to me, is probably the scariest movie ever made because of what it's saying about the people in our lives and the burdens that they can be. Maybe it's really even uncomfortable to even talk or think about. I mean, if you look back at Cure, I mean, his wife, who he loves dearly, but Cure is all about tapping into this subconscious. It's kind of Jungian and dealing with, what's his name? The animal magnitude guy. Can't remember his name. Mesmer? Was that his name?
Oh, I don't know.
Or was that I don't remember. Anyway, really deep, heady philosophical stuff, but on a more layman's level, because I don't have a psych degree, he is exploring repressed desire and complex emotional responses to people who we're very close to.
Yeah.
And that describes kind of Lost Chapter to a T in a way. So
yeah, I guess so. I was gonna say, I mean, Cure to me is the scariest you can get, strictly and on a psychological basis.
yeah,
Which can bring about a physical response, but generally, I think people going into horror films expect like moments that give you goosebumps and jump scares and things. And this is like the furthest end of just it's like literally playing tricks with your mind in that film. Which I mean, I don't feel like Shinji Sōmai ever really got too further into. His films feel very like how do I put this? Like it's a very tangible level of like chaos and angst and things like that. And I think that was something that I really loved about P.P. Ryder, was just the tangible kind of angst of that film. There's so many sequences in it. Like I mean, just to kind of sum it up quickly, it's about a group of 3 kids that are trying to rescue the class bully from being kidnapped.
Who they hate.
They hate him, but they want to rescue him, which is a very like child logic. You know what I mean? Like that's a logic you'd see in a children's film, but they're rescuing him from the Yakuza, which is immediately very dark. Like I don't know how you would do that, at least back in the 80s, in a very like warm, lighthearted way. So it's a dark film.
It is.
And I mean, there's the sequence at the end with all the cocaine is just
and like these kids throwing this coke around. And it's interesting to me. It's not his darkest, but it has these really dark moments. I don't think Anything But Love Hotel can be his darkest, but again, that's kind of an anomaly.
No. Yeah, right. Because it's because he's dealing with an adult story.
Yeah.
It's like it gives him permission to go that much further with the content. In terms of his other films, there's like, how would I put this? Like it gets close to there's attempts of sexual violence, but never outright sexual violence. Whereas with it being a Pink film, Love Hotel, like there's quite a bit of it, if I remember correctly.
Well, Love Hotel, I think it's just the what do they call that? The central event, the thing that kicks everything off.
Yeah.
Well, but then also like in the hotel room. Yeah, I mean, but it's not as now. I should also say I probably can count how many Pink films I've seen on one hand.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen very many. They're not really for me. I struggle at not any. Like I
don't blame you.
Well, like Salo is one of my all-time favorite movies, so it's not that I'm not willing to go.
Yeah.
One that sticks out that I have seen is Go Second Time Virgin. I think that's the name.
Fantastic.
Which is a classic of the genre.
Oh, amazing,
correct?
Yeah. Koji Wakamatsu.
Incredibly well shot, but super hard to watch. It reminded me at times in its relentlessness of like the first half of Miss 45, Abel Ferrara's Miss 45.
Oh,
it's just relentless.
Yeah,
And of course complicated by the fact that at least the characters in Second Time Virgin are young, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, like
I don't think the actors were, but like
teenagers.
Yeah. So with my very limited knowledge of Pink films, Love Hotel seems very subversive of the subgenre. Would you agree? Or maybe not subversive, but it's like he's dipping his toes into it.
Well, which makes sense because I don't think he did any other films like that. I did see one in his filmography that was centered around an idol singer that I think is a bit on the erotic side, but I don't think it's like an outright Pink film. But Love Hotel is pretty par for the course, to be honest, in terms of like transgressive content and everything.
Okay.
If anything that makes it stand out is, it's just based on like rereading my review this morning, was that it's a lot sadder than usual. Yeah. But even with that being said, like I'm sure I've come across other Pink films that are very sad. Yeah. A lot of times they can be anything, just as long as they have a certain amount of sexual content at a certain amount of times throughout the film. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense then why, someone like Shinji Somei would at least get a chance to do it. And I'm not really sure the conditions for why he made the film. I think it was part of the director's company, and I think they started out doing mostly pink films. I think like Banmei Takahashi, who went on to do Door 1 and 2, started at doing pink films. I think Kiyoshi Kurosawa started at doing pink films.
So Bumpkin Soup is a pink film? I did not get that impression. Okay. I've never seen it.
Neither have I. I watched a clip of it this morning, actually, and it looked really interesting. Like, I'm kind of considering getting it. My only hesitation is that I watched The Guard from the Underground, which is
that Kurosawa?
Kiyoshi Kurosawa doing kind of like a slasher that takes place in like an office building, and the killer, which right from the beginning, is this sumo wrestler. Although not he doesn't look portly. He looks more like just large, like very tall and wide. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, but just not like, he doesn't look,
not a sumo wrestler.
Yeah, but he is, I guess.
But he is one.
Yeah. So he's a guard that goes around killing people, and I gotta be honest with you, it is boring.
Oh, I was just about to say, it sounds freaking cool, but bummer.
It does. But he was not cooking yet.
No,
I guess.
And he made so many movies that there are bound to be some that are misses. And I don't think at that time, like, because in the late 90s, early 2000s, his movies became really like dense. Like, I can't remember the name. Serpent's Path. Have you seen that one?
No, I've been meaning to. Friends have told me that one's amazing. So
it's really good. And like, but the big thing, like one of the big like central metaphors, or if it's not a metaphor, it's like a key, like a skeleton key, is a math problem. And I am not mathematically inclined at all. But like, I remember the movie returns to it at the end, and it's like, I'm sure revelatory for someone who understands like basic arithmetic, which I mean I can do. Basic, very basic, but not. I think it's like it's a math problem of some sort, and it kind of lays out, was the impression that I got, everything going on. Anyway, so Kurosawa at first probably had to get his footing like everyone else.
I think he kind of came up a little bit after Shinji Somei. I think what I was reading, Shinji Somei was like an AD with Nakatsu in the 70s, and then he came up making his own films in the 80s. Which I think his first film has a few different titles, some of which I'm like, do I want to watch that?
Dreamy 15. I even mentioned that in my review for, oh God, what was it? I think it was PP Rider. I said the unfortunately titled, but I'm sure, and I also mentioned that it's probably just a poor translation, or maybe not. Right. I don't know. I'm hoping it was. Well, I've heard it. I can't remember what it was, but there's an essay in the Typhoon Club 4K that I have that calls it something else that's like not like that at all. So probably had multiple titles.
Something couple, like The Wild Couple or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Do you feel though like his films sexualize young people in any way?
Or at least no, and especially like Typhoon Club does not. No. Typhoon Club, it seems like, could you imagine like being tasked with that film? Ugh, that'd be tough. Like making it, like being tasked with making it. I would not want to be the guy who has to do that. No, but I don't think it does at all. And I think that it's a miracle that it doesn't.
I think what it is that he plays with like sexual ideas, and sexuality with young kids, which I just think at this point in like 2025 is just, no one wants to touch anymore. And I totally get it. I think that there are probably ways to do it. And I think it's probably best if someone, like if you're doing a film about a little girl's experience with sexuality, maybe get a woman to direct it, that kind of thing.
100%.
I think with this like older man directing a film about a little, not a little girl, but like a teenage girl.
Teen.
A teen. It does feel kind of like,
it's just so hard to do without, and somehow somebody does it, at least with Typhoon Club, with a sailor suit doesn't really, does it? It might.
So
Can't
It's
recall.
interesting. Rob on Caliber 9 from Outer Space.
Oh yeah.
He was saying that he watched Sailor Suit first, and he couldn't get into it because he found the film leering at this little girl. Now, I think that there's a couple scenes in it that are a bit of a gray area, but I always took them as platonic, and I
Yeah.
always took them as like being
with her
very-
and the Yakuza guy.
yeah, and like there's a scene where the one guy kind of like hugs her, but kind of like collapses into her. But it seemed almost more maternal to me than
Mhm.
like romantic in any way or sexual.
I agree. That's why, because I was like, I'm not positive because I put it on last night and I fell asleep. Not
Oh,
because
fair,
the
fair.
movie's bad. It was 2 a.m.
Oh,
But
shit,
I wanted
yeah.
to refresh my mind with the imagery and the basics
Totally.
of it. So yeah, I did put it on. I was gonna put it on with a commentary, but there isn't one in the Arrow release, which was a bummer.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, they are usually really good with commentaries. It's like
Hmm.
my favorite thing about Arrow is that they're really good with commentaries. But so no, I didn't make it all the way through on rewatch, and so I can't say for sure, but I do not remember it being like that.
Yeah.
Lost Chapter, but see, Lost Chapter feels different. It doesn't. We're talking more like visually how they do it.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's more. If anything, it's more like narratively and thematically. Lost Chapter is a gray area. It never
Yeah.
feels visually exploitative or anything.
No,
like that.
no.
And PP Rider doesn't. I don't think.
No, there's, I mean, the Yakuza guy that the kids work with, there's a couple scenes where he's very like loving with the girl.
Bruce.
Is that his name or the girl's name?
I think that's her name. Well, it's not her
Right,
real name,
yeah.
but she calls herself Bruce. I loved that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think he like kind of hugs her a couple times, and I remember watching it thinking like, yeah, it's not even that it's like directly bad, but it's just a moment where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I think that's okay.
I think too, it's such a tricky thing because with the terrible things that go on throughout the world in this subject, we're as we should be, hyper attuned to certain signs.
Yeah,
And,
totally.
I think that the best person to probably speak on this, who may or may not ever want to, is someone who has, unfortunately, firsthand experience with that sort of thing.
Sure.
In my experience, those are the people who have the best radar for it, to where they can say, oh, no, it's actually not like that at all. And you're like, really? Okay, well, I take your word for it. Or they're like, no, this is creepy. I don't have the tools. I'm lucky that I don't have the tools to discuss that. But I will say that I think Sōmai, on the whole, does not feel like he's exploiting anyone, whether behind or in front of the camera. I know that in Typhoon Club they all wore coverings during the scene, which is super long, and it's not sexual at all.
No.
Now, but that being said, try to sell somebody on a movie and where you have to tell them, oh, a bunch of tweens get naked and dance in the rain.
Yeah.
No one just telling that to them.
Yeah.
People are going to look at you like, the fuck?
Yeah,
and
like,
understandably so. But it's so far back and it's rainy and they're wearing things. It doesn't feel exploitative at all.
Yeah.
To me.
I think that's the thing with his films is that you have to kind of work on it when you're watching. You have to kind of make up your mind about it as you watch it, because you can't say clearly he's not exploiting anyone.
No. Well, yeah, it just seems like he's not. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of get that impression. And his films, especially throughout the 80s, we were saying this earlier about moving, but his films also had a lot of ambiguity to them.
Yeah.
Certain moments that seem like, is that real? Is that, a dream? Is that, like, what's the meaning of this character's motivations? Like, why did the character do that? Things like that happen. So I think if you're playing in like a stew of that, of like so much ambiguity, you throw in these moments where they seem like gray areas with like younger actors. it's just sort of a hard thing to digest fully. And I think
Yeah.
for some people, they're not going to want to go there. You know
No,
what I mean?
and I don't blame them. Like, I would never
No.
hold it against anybody. Also, I will say, this just kind of popped into mind. I don't know how much he is or isn't exploring certain very uniquely Japanese contextual things with schoolgirl culture, all that, which I don't know too much about because I honestly don't really want to, but I know it's a thing. Like, I know it's a thing, unfortunately.
Yeah. And to go along with what you're saying, when I watched Lost Chapter of Snow Passion, I read up about it afterwards to kind of, make up my mind more, and discovering that it was one of these like idol films, it did actually calm my my issues with it a bit, because I feel like, I don't know why, but that seems like less of an exploitive. It seems like less of a how do I put this? Like a place for exploitation, then, because you're supposed to make this vehicle. It's supposed to be like a film for the general public to like fall in love with this character.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think
and
that's
so
the
therefore
of it.
they need a love story for her. They want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it just so happens to be this sort of not, but again, it doesn't really go there. So it's great.
Yeah.
I will say it feels nothing like something like Euphoria, which I can't stand.
Oh, I've never really watched it. Yeah.
I grew up, not like a bunch of like popular. Are they popular? I don't know. I couldn't make it through like much of that show. But like that show feels super exploitative, and all those actors are of age, but they're playing children. I'm sure somebody who listens to this will either be like, hell yeah, I hate Euphoria, or someone's going to be like, this guy's an idiot.
Right.
I just hate it. I can't. And it feels really gross to me.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a weird one.
It doesn't feel nuanced. It doesn't. Now, people, again, are going to disagree. I did drugs as a teenager. I knew people who were in that life. So trust me, I get it. It's just the presentation. That is not what Sōmai's films feel like.
No.
But they're sharing the theme of coming of age into this wall of adult peril and serious stuff and desires and all this tricky stuff.
I found Typhoon Club especially like I kind of weirdly related to it. There's something about it.
It's funny you say that. I know it was on Rob from Caliber 9's podcast, Rob and Joe. I think it was he who said that he actually found Mikami to be a bit annoying, which I was like, man, I kind of related to that kid.
100%. Yeah. I mean, this is like kind of a cheesy thing to compare it to, but Donnie Darko.
100%. And I unabashedly love Donnie Darko. I used to love it when I was a kid, of course, or, a young teen. And then, like, when I was, like, 19 or 20, I would have scoffed at it and been like, oh, that movie's, Now I love it again because I'm just like, yeah, it's real. Like, it's...
Don't you love that, though, when you can kind of get over that sort of, like, uppityness about films,
The full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think I'm a bit... Well, I know I'm a bit older than you. I watched it when it came out on I think, VHS. I think it was VHS or maybe
like
DVD.
02 probably.
02, yeah. And I think at the time I was 17 maybe, and it was just like, oh my god, this movie is speaking to me. I feel like this character sometimes, and then watching Typhoon Club, you get a little bit of that with Mikami. I mean, it's I'd say it's more sophisticated, more unique. It might even be more uniquely Japanese as well.
Yes, definitely. And it's more grounded, I think.
For sure. But then also more absurd. But
for
no
sure.
spoilers.
And
so.
No, for sure. But I think Donnie is more of like a solipsist, whereas Mikami is not at all. He's focused, again, it's hard to talk about his fate, but he is more focused on everyone around him.
Yeah.
Whereas Donnie has to go on this journey to shed his... Because it's not narcissism, it's solipsism. He can only think about his own thing, and then I don't care about spoiling Donnie Darko. If you haven't seen Donnie Darko, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
When Donnie lays down to die at the end, he's giving. Although actually, you know, they're different starting points, but they're kind of the same endpoint. Although it feels. Yeah, you're right. There are parallels. We'll put it that way. There are really interesting parallels there.
Yeah, totally.
Now I kind of want to double feature them.
That's a very gloomy day.
Oh my God, yeah. Need some cartoons after that.
Hell yeah. Are there any directors that you would compare to Shinji Sōmai, especially outside of Japan, maybe to help someone who might be familiar with the director you bring up, who doesn't know Shinji?
Yeah, you know, I was actually thinking about this, and I can't really think of anyone. His films feel, I can think of like for the technical side, like the long takes, like I could say like Theo Angelopoulos, but they're so different. I mean, in terms of everything else, they're so different.
Yeah.
Coming of age, I mean, maybe Edward Yang.
Okay.
But we're still in East Asian, we're still in East Asia.
Well, that's fine too. Yeah.
Yeah. But, like, I think I remember saying something like about Sailor Suit, where it was like, it's kind of like if Edward Yang made a somewhat silly Yakuza movie, coming of age thing.
Saying that, yeah.
But even Yang, I don't think uses long takes like that. He uses them, but like A Brighter Summer Day is 4 hours long, so I'm sure there's just long takes out of necessity, but it doesn't feel. It's really Sōmai does really feel singular.
Absolutely.
There are other Japanese directors, like maybe Obayashi, although Obayashi is so much more whimsical than Sōmai.
Nobuhiko Obayashi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see. Okay, I think the big similarity with them, and that would actually help selling it to people who know Obayashi, is that Obayashi does work with children a lot.
Yeah. That's why. But Obayashi is much more fantastical. Maybe would be the word.
More like pop art. He doesn't really do long takes.
No,
he does more like quick edits and stuff like that.
I think a great movie, if you like Sōmai, would be, I think I mentioned this earlier, Ham on Rye.
Right. Okay, I got to check that out.
It's just a great movie that I kind of like to champion.
Cool.
Because if you look at the Letterboxd average, it's not very high. People don't like it.
Really?
Because it starts out as this coming of age, straightforward, almost John Hughes, but also like not. But there's clearly an influence there. There's clearly a debt there. It's clearly a debt to like 90s Nickelodeon, which that's when you grew up. In fact, I don't know how big you are into all that, but that's definitely your childhood. There are actors from, like, I think there's a guy from Heavyweights, a guy from, or a gal from another Nick thing. So it's very conscious of that, almost like in a meta sort of way. But then the second half of Ham on Rye is almost like a slow cinema, like a Simon Lang sort of deal. People say David Lynch, but I think that's just because anytime anything's mildly surreal or slow or airy, they just say David Lynch, which is okay. Like, I don't agree,
almost,
but you know,
it's almost like the worst thing to compare sometimes.
Yeah.
David, it's like, it's very Lynch, and I'm like, really, is it? I mean, I love Lynch, but
so of course, same here. Of course, he's one of my favorites. But
but yeah. So last question then, and then we get to the questionnaire, and then I'll let you go. I'm assuming you'd say moving, but what's like the main film that you would suggest for someone starting out with Sōmai?
Depends who's asking.
Right.
For someone who's either not able, willing, or just it's not their flavor to parse all the sort of complex, tricky stuff in Typhoon Club, it would be moving.
Totally.
But for most people who I know would like be interested in that, and Typhoon Club to me feels like his definitive work. But I've long since said it's my favorite, but after last night, but moving is so different. I think they might both be equally films that I love because, you know, they're so different.
Yeah.
They're hard to even, the only through line is that they're both about kids, and they're technically not even that similar. Cause again, there are long takes in moving, but nothing like his earlier stuff.
I'd say one of the biggest differences, I mean, there's so many between both of them, but is that in Typhoon Club, I don't think there's any non-diegetic music. And then
No.
in like there is music, but it's always played on a
Yeah.
stereo.
Japanese reggae, man.
Yeah, which
I love
liked.
it.
Yeah,
I
so
love
good.
it.
But then in Moving, there is non-diegetic music.
There, and it's like classical, which after
something like
watching
that,
all
yeah.
of this, no, well, or yeah, but it's like it's not popular, it's not contemporary.
Yeah.
And after watching all these other Sōmai films recently,
Yeah.
and then revisiting Moving, I was like taken aback by that, and I thought it was really effective and a nice change. It does feel like I haven't seen anything after Moving, but it does feel like it's either an anomaly or it's indicative of where he was going and where he probably would have continued to go.
Yeah.
Had he lived to make more films.
The Friends, which is the film he did afterwards, which I watched last night, is continuing in that direction of just a lot less ambiguity, more of a straightforward story, and there's a lot of non-diegetic music. It's weird. It was like kind of like guitar driven, like acoustic kind of like jazz.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really
interesting.
Some of it was kind of good. Some of it reminded me of like math rock a little.
Okay.
Like just a little bit.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
But it just seems like he was going in that direction. But to what you were saying earlier, like, between Moving or Typhoon Club, like to me, Typhoon Club is my favorite, but Moving is maybe what I would consider his objectively like best film. Yeah. Like that's the one that would win an Academy Award.
And there are probably a handful of people who the film I'd recommend would be Sailor Suit.
Oh, okay.
If it was someone who just didn't like to, because there's people who don't want to watch a movie that's going to make them feel a lot or make them think a lot, which Moving makes you feel and Typhoon Club makes you think a lot.
That's true. Yeah.
If you just want to have a blast, Sailor Suit's the way to go, man.
Yeah.
And but the cool thing too about Sailor Suit, there's stuff to think about there too. There's a lot of a lot of stuff about. I do want to mention, because I forgot to mention this, the Yakuza are so present in his films, the earlier ones at least, especially. Yeah, I love how the Yakuza is implemented in Typhoon Club so subtly and so importantly, with the uncle,
right,
of the teacher.
Yeah,
I think you mentioned something like that, right, in your piece or in your review. Something you mentioned it somewhere about the uncle.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's not really stated directly, and you kind of have to pick up on it from, I think, his tattoos.
From the tattoos, exactly. Yeah, which anyone who knows, there's not going to be people in Japan. Well, maybe now. I think now, because tattoos have become way more common. But back in that day, there was no one with, especially that sort of ink, the sort of like flowery or the dragons. There's a specific kind of tattoo.
Like a full sleeve of it too.
Yeah, almost like the same thing they did with Samoans, but way different in terms of design. But like that cover of the whole shoulder and then the back too.
Yeah.
And he has does he have his full back done? I can't recall.
I don't remember.
But either way, it's clear that he's Yakuza.
Right.
Which I think was so cool how, Typhoon Club, he's sort of tamping things back, but at the same time, it slips in. It all slips in, and the violence slips in, and the danger. I think also a big thing, just to, round us out of my thoughts about Sōmai, he explores like incongruity a lot, and how adults are really not as sharp. It almost like he's coming at it from a kid's perspective, because in his films, a lot of times the adults are very incompetent, or at the very least, they're not the astute ones in the room. It's the kids who are more.
Well, it's almost like they're all on the same level.
Yeah. Well, or even the kids are more attuned to certain emotional things or certain realities that the adults, for whatever reason, are tuning out or just oblivious to. Yeah. I think it's really interesting in Typhoon Club how all the adults are either not present or like shot up. Like I think Mikami's dad is like, we hear him, but we don't see him. And the teacher ends up drunk and, not. And then you've got the two people playing the ocarina, which I don't even know what that's about. I love it.
Amazing.
I love that music. They used it in the trailer for the restoration.
Oh, okay.
Which is like a great trailer. When they did the Cinema Guild put it out, they did that. They used that ocarina theme. But yeah, there's just so much I could. He's such an endlessly fascinating filmmaker. Yeah, I love his work, especially Typhoon Club, Moving, and Sailor Suit. Those are my three favorites.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll move to the questionnaire then. I'll let you go. What is one item you can't live without?
I'm going to answer these the way you do like an ink block test or like a Rorschach.
Yeah, of course.
The first thing that came to mind was cigarettes. Isn't that sad?
Oh, I didn't know you're a smoker.
Unfortunately.
Okay, you're not a vapist?
No.
Okay.
I'm a classicist in that regard. No, okay. Cigarettes, but one item I can't live without would be a book.
Okay. What was the last great movie you saw in theaters?
Theaters? What? Ooh. I can't ink blot this one because I have to think. Yeah. What did I see? Oh, I saw The French Connection on 35 millimeter with my father. That was really nice. That was a really cool experience.
That sounds amazing.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Okay. What was the last great concert you went to?
I have been to like 3 concerts in my life.
Okay. I mean, if you can't.
I got a funny one for you. I saw Kansas at a chili cook-off.
There you go. That's amazing.
I was in like middle school, but yeah, we were talking before the pod about overstimulation. Right. Concerts are really bad, crowds and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I don't do well, unfortunately. But every night's a concert for me in my headphones. But yeah, so Kansas at a chili cook-off, I think is a cool answer. That's funny
an amazing answer. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this one will be easy for you. What was the last great book you read?
Oh, man. Well, I'm in the middle. Okay, you know what? I finished William Gass's In the Heart of the Country, which we talked about a little bit.
To me. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I read the first, it's 2 novellas and I think 3 short stories. I read the first 2 stories, which are the novellas, a couple years ago. And then I returned to the collection and finished it. And the last story, the eponymous story, In the Heart of the Country, has the most beautiful writing I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I've read a couple, maybe even a few hundred books just in the last few years.
You're a great writer yourself, so
thank you.
You'd have a good
big influence, big inspiration on me would be William Gass. His sort of rhythms, his use of language. For anyone listening, if you're remotely interested in writing or reading or just the use of language and all its magic, I highly recommend, if not reading some of his work, just looking up some of his quotes about language.
Okay, cool.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm personally a big fan of Joan Didion and her writing.
I read Play It As It Lays last year, and I've actually got Slouching Toward Bethlehem, her essays.
Nice.
I'm planning on diving into this year.
Yeah. Even when I don't like her books, just the way she writes, I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect.
Yes. Okay. She's beautiful. Her prose is beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So for his final meal, John Wayne Gacy picked KFC chicken, shrimp, and strawberries. For your final meal before being executed, which would you pick? Or what would you pick?
Oh, man. So there's a pizza in... It's a Maryland, Delaware area.
Okay.
And it's called Grotto Pizza. It would be a cheese and a pepperoni. Okay. They're both great for different reasons. The way they do the pizza, it's like a small spiral out to the outside, and so big spirals, and it's cheese sauce. And it doesn't sound like it would be that good, but it is. And the pepperoni, great. Oh, it's so good. And if you ever make it to like the Maryland, Delaware, I think they have some in Virginia too, but only in Northern Virginia. But mostly Maryland, Delaware. Might have some in Pennsylvania, but that area, it's the best pizza I've ever had in my life. So one of each of those, pepperoni and a cheese. Then I would want, your last meal. I would definitely want something sweet. I would want some, I don't know, just whatever the best ice cream I could get my freaking hands on.
Yeah, what flavor?
Vanilla. I'm vanilla.
You're one of those. Okay.
Yeah, just straight like a good vanilla bean.
Sure.
But I also love like peanut butter ice cream with like egg yolk. You know, they mix it up. I don't know if it's not like raw egg yolk. It's like the way they make it. It's like soft serve.
Okay.
People may know what I'm talking about, and I may be getting it wrong, but I think it has like egg yolk. It's really rich soft serve ice cream.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
And then I'd want, you know, it may sound funny, but just like a bag of Doritos.
Hell yeah! What flavor?
Regular nacho.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man. And I would pray that I would get a bunch that were really like thick with the seasoning.
Yeah,
It's like my last meal, man.
That
And to
sounds
drink,
good.
I would want Welch's grape soda. I would want
wow.
some Jack Daniels, since I don't have to worry about my stomach. I'm
Yeah.
going to be dead soon. And then I would want ice cold water. Cold as you can get it. So
All
yeah,
right.
a junky ass last meal, but
Oh,
who cares, right? You're going to die.
Yeah. That was, oh man, that's a killer answer. Thank you.
I haven't eaten today, so that's probably why it's such a good answer.
Well, I'll give you the final question, then you can go and get the
you're
pizza
good.
and everything. So this is the last question though.
Okay.
Can art go too far?
Well, I mean, it can go too far on an individual basis. I think film can go too far if you're having unethical practices in the making of.
Yeah.
Can a novel go too far? No.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
No. Can a painting? Film, because there's so many moving parts. There's so many people who have to be cared for and who have to be safe.
Yeah.
But fiction, just in terms of what's being told, no. There are things that I don't feel like indulging in that cross an arbitrary line. Sure, but nothing can go too far in terms of an authoritative, this is wrong, we can't have this. No. I think that's a slippery slope. I think that's no.
Great.
Definitely not.
No, I think that's a great answer. Okay, Jerry, thank you so much for your time. Anything you want to plug and let people know, like where they can find you?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. And just my Letterboxd, it's my name, Jerry McGlothlin. I'm sure you'll spell it out in the description. So
yeah, I'll
or if
put
you just
the
want
links
to,
and all that.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not really a big social media guy, but I do use Letterboxd quite often. And in my Letterboxd, you can find my Spotify, my Goodreads, if you care about what I listen to and read.
Cool.
So yeah, but that's it, man. And I really appreciate you having me on. I love Shinji Sōmai, and I am glad that you asked me to do this because it gave me a good reason to go deeper. Because I'd only seen the 3, which are still my top 3, and I've only seen 5. I feel bad and get to Luminous Woman, but even after this, I'm excited to watch the rest of his work. So, and I really appreciate you being the catalyst for me to go further into his body of work because it's endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, Jerry. It was great talking with you.
Yeah. It was
okay,
great.
We'll be in touch though. We'll keep
yes,
talking,
for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll let you go. Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well. Bye-bye.